one of the best games of Kasparov, also known as Kasparov's Immortal, against Vasilin Topalov, which was played in 1999 Vincenzi. Hello guys, so I am Veer. Today we are going to begin a series, Games of Masters, in which we will be analyzing various games of past world champions, legends, or some immortals, which we will discuss further. So today we are going to begin with Gary Kasparov's game against Vasilin Topalov. So yeah, the first move was played e4, and as it is known, this is the most played opening overall in chess. So it was met with d6, and Topalov is considered as a Sicilian player. He is a Sicilian player and he has played Sicilian throughout his whole life. But today, in this game, he tried Port, and it was a surprise for Gary Kasparov. He continued d4, they continued with Perk. It was the main line, where knight c3 was played. Here, their f3 has also been played in a game. There is a game like f3, e5, d5, c6, and c4. And this was a game between Gary Kasparov versus Vahels M in Germany in 1992. But maybe Kasparov was not so sure, as Vasilin Topalov is also known for King's Indian attack lines, and he has played that throughout his life. So they continue in the main opening and they go throughout the perk g6 and then bishop e3. Bishop e3. Here, if black moves like knight g4, bishop g5, and here the tempo gets wasted. Like the knight is doing nothing right now, and the bishop has place to retreat itself. So there is not big problem, and that loses the tempo. And therefore, here bishop g7 was played, continuing the development, and there was game going on. Here, there was c6 is also considered as an interesting line. Here, there's an interesting line such as c6, and it can be met with h3 and h3 to guard g4. Because now knight g4 can be threatened, as after queen d2, knight g4 works like bishop g5, h6, and some lines. And then there is an option of trade, which we would rather avoid in this position. So after bishop g7, Gary Kasparov continued with queen d2 with the idea of bishop h6 again. Bishop h6 threatened in future after castling or something, some various lines. So here, black played c6. Continued with f3, the main theory like to avoid knight g4 right now, and using this properly. And here, bishop h6 can also be played. Bishop h6 can be like, the problem is after bishop h6, queen h6, the king is not castled, but the position does not seem like developed. These pieces are not developed by knight g4, and that can be made with tempo. Or something like e5 or some breaks can be also be played. And here queen a5 can also be played, like queen a5, bishop d3 like the development moves, and then here c5, the break. Because if black captures, the knight e2 is the best move, like to keep the knight in the center. But if so if he captures, then it can be just captured, or d5 can also be played. I think capturing is the best move as it seems, as this queen is out of the game as of now. But this pieces are developed at least, and the king like does not seem a good position for white to attack or something like that. So here the game continued with f3, and after that b5. b5 is like a unique move, like not very much seen in nowadays games. b5 was played here, and b5 aims at bursting out in the position even without without the king safety. And this is something very unique. Like this used to happen a lot in the olden games where it was tactical and people used to think of there. So the game continued with knight ge2 and knight g2. Here white could have also went for castling, then queen a5, king b1 protecting the a2 pawn, because the b4 would have met to knight move and the a2 pawn would have been hanging. But if something bishop h6 could have been played, then there is this some like threats like this, like queen a2 and queen a1 threat, something like that. So it is not preferably played. So king b1 is played, and knight b d7. This continues in the theory, and now black tries to play knight a4, knight c4, and open the b file. and tries to attack on the b file and tries to get like the Sicilian structure. So after knight g2, black went knight b t7, which was met with bishop h6. And here, black had moves like castling, but castling would have also met with bishop g7, king g7, and g4. And this would have led to instant attack like h4, h5 burst out. And like black did not have enough time to attack as the white's king was safe in center. It is in center, but it seemed safe. So here bishop h6 was played. He captured the bishop, and then queen h6. Now bishop b7, trying to develop the bishop because the bishop would have no good squares. Like here, it could have been met with the d5 in the future. These squares are not available for the bishop to be developed after the knight moves. So bishop b7 with the idea of c5 targeting on e4, or with the idea of d5, something like that. So here, black could have also played like the immediate burst out e5, which can be considered actually an interesting move as e5 and a3. Like the idea is you cannot capture this. D into e5, then d into e5. The queen's file is open, and later if you bring like knight c1, knight d3 maneuver, if you play knight c1, there is bishop b7 targeting the e4, continued with c5 and c4, and there is nothing to stop this. So e5 should be met with a3 to avoid b4 counterplay, and the b5 pawn should be attacked. And then queen a5. Then now we can capture as the queen is not in this file, and now it will take time, and we can also continue with b4 in the future. And that is why the game was played continued with bishop b7, a3. Now a3 is an important move as it is a right moment of prophylaxis, because if here white could have castled, then there are chances of queen a5, b4, and immediate burst out. And now the queen is also not here for defending it. So that is why your castles, and if anything like knight c1 and knight d3 would have been planned, then immediate e5 was again a threat. Playing with d5 or knight into e5, there are multiple threats, and this is an open position. As white's king is in the center, black's king is in the center, so anything could have happened at any moment. So here the best move and the prophylactic move could have been a3, which could have been the supporting move, not the attacking move, but supporting move. Continued with e5 break eventually. This is the whole idea. Here, black would have also have the idea of a5 and something like b4, some such ideas like b4 maybe. White has to move his knight and there is not a good square, like knight b1 would be a bad, knight a2 is not good. The idea would be knight d1, knight e3 or knight f2, knight g4, something like that. But that would be like very much worse, and b4 could have been played instantly. Then this would have been a like good position, but the kings are in the center. Black could have attacked. Black could have tried to create something side effect. e5. After e5, now is the time for long castle. As now, queen a5 does not come, because queen a5 and now the threat of b4 is protected because of a3, and now d into e5 can be captured right now. So d into e5 and d into e5. And now we have a rook open file. And now we have a chance we can attack or something, generate some counterplay out there. Also go something like f4, something like if he captures, then queen f4, e5, or knight f4, e5, something like that. Looks good for white. So here, in the game, black played queen e7. Queen e7, like there could have been an idea of long castle, or idea of queen f8, queen trade, or the best idea, which was like it was to control the e4. Black wants to get a like castle very soon because the king in the center is not very good as of now, as the rook has got the open d file. And here the threat is like if he captures, then the rook has the open file. I can attack d6. D6 becomes a weakness if captured with the queen in future. If captured the knight, d6 is a weakness, and if captured with the pawn, like the d file becomes a weakness as of now in this position. So the black's main aim was to save the king. And after like year c5, such ideas couldn't have been played because of knight b5. So now black thought and played a6 so that the b5 pawn can be protected. And after b5, in future c5 can be idea, and castles can also be done. Like c5 gets the bishop something grave, and then long castle happens. So here white saw that a6, every pawn move creates a weakness. So here White saw the idea like knight a5, like knight c1, knight b3, knight a5 could be a good move, like attacking the b7 bishop. And this position, the knight gets a good square. As if the king castles here, then the king will not be safe as let continued with queen e3 takes and queen a7. Something would have been there, and this could have been better for him. So white played knight c1, as Gary Kasparov saw it already. So here, long castle, as it was ideas as it was black's idea. Continued with knight b3, and now here Topalov realized that knight a5 can be dangerous, and he does not know what can he do. So he thought that I should capture the d4 pawn instead. That if I capture, if there's something like knight d4, then I can continue with c5 or something like that. Knight b3, and this is like a better version. Has the black has some pawn structure in the center attacking, and knight e5 can be played. Knight e5, knight c4, something like that. So here, black but instead he captured with the rook because he wanted to have the idea knight a5. So he captured with the rook. Now again c5, again rook d1, and there is nothing. The same line. But capturing with knight would have been like just a waste of moves. So here, knight b6, knight b6, and now g3, g3, and instead of g3, and instead of knight b6 as well, knight e5 could have been an idea, but it could have been met with bishop e2, d5, f4, something like that. Because d5 break does not work because of f4, e5, and this break was going to be very good for white. So knight b6 was played. Knight b6 was an important move. Like it could have also been continued with knight c4, but the problem to knight c4 is bishop into c4, pawn into c4, and eventually the queen b7, and that could have burst out, and the white king would have been exposed as well. So here he continued with g3. Idea like bishop h6, the only not developed piece for attacking the black's king. So that a bishop h3, knight h5, knight a5, and there could have been a good communication. So here he goes king b8, avoiding this bishop h3 direct threat, but knight a5. Now Kasparov's knights are attacking, and whereas this rook is not doing anything major as it is like blocked by his own pawn and nothing great. This rook is on the h8 square, like not doing anything, not defending his king as well. Whereas our knights, knight on a5, knight on c3, guards the d5, bishop g2 or bishop h3 in long run can help to avoid this. And there can be threats like knight b7 or knight c6 if bishop moves. If anything like this, then knight c6 and queen is hanging. So here, bishop 8. Because if the bishop would have been traded, if he would have played something like queen to e6, let's just play. Then takes, and bishop g2. Continued with f4 and e5, which would have been a bad position for black because the light squares are weakened, and we have a light square bishop on which we can convert the position very easily. And as Kaspar, being the world champion, knows how to convert these positions at least. So bishop h3 was played, continued in the game, and bishop h3. Here, black thought that if he wouldn't do anything, then eventually he's going to burst out. Then let's try for something. He went for d5. d5 has its own effect, but the problem to d5 was this. The f4 diagonal got open, and queen f4 check. Kasparov took full opportunity and advantage of it. Now, like there is a move like queen c7, but queen c7 would have led to free knight, and this is not anyways good. And there is no move like rook d6, queen d6. Eventually, same thing, e5, and the knight is hanging. So black had to go king to a7 because all the other squares was covered by our bishop and knight. So king a7 was the only move left. Now, white thought that if he goes e5, then it's going to be a commitment, and then knight d7 and could have been like a settled position, not that great. And ed5 would have led to opening of the position like knight d5, knight d5, knight d5, and this would have led to opening of position. So why to exchange the pawns instead? Why not to develop the rook? So he went rook h7. Idea like if captured attacks the queen, and some basic ideas, and not this. Developing the pieces, continue like using the basic rules, not any great sacrifice or anything till now. He developed everything very basically and works fine. Here he went to d4. Like this is what black shouldn't have done. There should have been some various moves. Now knight d5 is also threatened. Like because if bishop captures, pawn captures, the rook is getting open file, and that would have been happen in the game. Like knight d5, he captured knight into d5 because bishop is important to keep in the game because of light square weaknesses. pawn captures, threatening like knight d6 and this knight c6 and rook into e7, something like that. So he goes queen d6. Now guys, can you guess the brilliant move which was played in the game? There are moves, general moves like rook e5 or can be queen captures, rook captures and rook e7, something like that. But, but that doesn't seem great because it was Kasparov's game. He found the brilliant move rook into d4. Rook into d4 with the idea like if pawn into d4, queen d4, and queen b6. If he goes anything like that, then rook e7. And then here, actually it's a mistake because now black can defend it like knight d7, rook d7, rook d7. Now it can be defended. So here, queen d4 is not a good move. Rook into e7, rook e7, giving another rook sacrifice like after queen into e7 and now queen d4. And now it is just a lost position for black as king b8, queen b6, queen b7 and knight c6 and leads to a beautiful checkmate which would have been seen by Kasparov. And here he told that it was his intuition. We can see that it was his intuition, not a thorough calculation. So he gave up his rook and the c into d capturing the rook was a mistake. And here there is only just one move left because this knight d7 or knight d7 does not work. Rook d7 does not work because of queen hanging. So here, king is left with king b8. King b8 can also be met with queen d4, again with the same idea of queen a7 checkmate and queen 8. And if captured, then again queen b6, the same idea. So he had to go king b6, the only move left. After king b6, there are moves like, but the most obvious move is queen d4. Like it's the idea, king a5, and here b4, king a4, and here there were better moves like Kasparov played queen c3. But can you find there is a move which would have led to finishing of the game itself and not extending the game any further. It would have led to finishing the game on the spot. Can you think? If you want to think, you can pause the video. The move was rook a7. Rook a7 with the idea like I can give up my rook. I am like I don't want the rook. I'll give up the rook. Like if black plays any move, like then takes and queen c3. Queen b3 is a checkmate and it cannot be defended. And if defended by bishop into d5, the brilliant move king b2. We are ready to sacrifice our queen. We don't care of anything. And that is what could have happened. And here, instead of giving up the rook, queen c3 could have been a better and the best continuation in the position, I think. So here, Kaspar did not see that. Kasparov's calculation was intuitive rather than thorough calculation. So it was like white. He was like I am going to win this position. I know how to win this position. I am being intuitive, and he played that queen d5, and this led to confusion. Like if your bishop d5 would have been played, again king b2 with the idea of queen b3, captures and pawn, and this was going to be a greatest mate, like a funny mate in the position, defeating a former world champion like this. So Vasilin Topalov saw and he played queen d5. Now again rook a7 with the idea of ace capturing a6, but this time there is another move. There are defenses like bishop b7. And earlier, whereas in this position, if you go rook a7, bishop b7 does not matter because rook into b7 is a free piece. And later can be continued with rook b6 and rook a6 itself. So that is why move like rook a7 was important in this position. Queen c3, queen d4, now bishop b7. And white gave up the rook, like black cannot capture queen b7 as queen b3 is again a checkmate. So black was like I'm an exchange up still. I don't care. I'll just trade off the queens. Because if queens are traded, I am short. And then this should be winning. Actually, black is a rook up, not an exchange up. So black was like queen c4. Let's offer a queen trade. But Kasparov being Kasparov, he was like, I have given you sacrifice, and you think I am going to waste my sacrifice? Of course not. I am going to go queen into f6, capturing the knight, and again threatening queen into a6 checkmate. And therefore, here, like black could have various options like rook h e8 to give up a rook or rook e1 something like that because the rook is hanging eventually, or something like the idea could have been like if white played something like bishop g4 just to move, takes if queen into e4 then queen b7, and now this position seems good for him. So he was like, okay, but queen c4 with the idea of trading queens. Here, black did not have any other move to rescue like except like this check and queen d4. Captures, and this position. Wait, just a minute, guys. Sorry. Here, excuse me. What happens to queen d4? Queen d4. Let's think together. Queen d4. Queen d4 is force. Rook into d4. I think there should be rook b6 or something like that. Rook a7 or rook b6. Oh, actually, rook a7 works. Because rook d6 can be met with. Actually, this is not the correct move. Guys, just a minute. I think I've misplayed a variation like, yeah, rook into f7. Yeah, and then with the idea of bishop e6 and bishop b3, this was supposed to be the best move. Yeah, sorry guys, I missed that. I forgot that in the variations. Yeah, so this was a win by force. So king into a3. Now black and white can play queen b2 something like that, and king a4, and now there is no win. And now rook d1 is threatened instead. That is why he had to capture queen into a6, king into b4, c3. Now, if anything is like played like queen b2 to either queen a3, queen c3 can be played. And this is going to be a bad end for the Kasparov's Immortal. So that is why he found the interesting move c3. c3 and now king c3. Now queen a1. And this continues the game. Like queen a1. This would have been calculated by Kasparov. And this continues queen b2 check, king d1 and king d1. So guys, you are not actually dreaming. The king from e8 went all up to like castles, king b8, king a7, king b6, king a5, king a4, king a3. And guys, this is how you see. Black's king from e8 moved to king to d1. And this is not your dream. That is the actual game of world champion. So king d1 and continue with bishop f1. The idea is like queen into f1. And now you are going to lose your king. Guys, can you guys find the win? Simple win, right? Queen e2, queen c2, king e1, and rook e7. That's a simple win. So that is why he cannot capture. So the idea was, the only idea left was rook d2. That let's trade the queens instead. You give up your bishop, I'll give up my rook, and then that is fair. Like I am a pawn up, I don't care of anything. But here, Kasparov had some different ideas. He was like, you want to trade, right? Take my rook. I'll give up my rook to d7, threatening this checkmate and allowing everything. So now, black has to capture rook into d7, which is a force. Now bishop c4, b into c4, queen into h8, and now Kasparov is just winning, completely winning in this position. Now it was like Murda Lash ka game chal raha hai, like it's the end of the game. C3, Queen A4, and Kasparov knew how to win this. So he was just waiting and continued. They played the game, and now Queen A7. Queen A7 is actually an important move because of Queen G1. Queen G1, Queen E3. The threat is Queen E3. If if Black does something like H6, then Queen E3, Rook E3, Rook E2, and Queen G1 checkmate. And here, if he goes moves the then Queen into C3. And this is winning for White. So here, Black played C2. And now you know why it's a blunder. Queen G1. And that is why Vasilin Topalov resigned. And here it ended Kasparov's game of Immortal. The Kasparov's game of Immortal game. And guys, if you do have any suggestions for other game, then do let me know. I'll consider it, or else we will continue uploading one video. I'll try to upload one video of Games of Master series. Thank you for joining. Do comment your favorite games in the